Now for this next talk, I would like to talk about a thing that we at Pipedrive called Tribes and Missions Framework. And we actually had a couple of weeks back, I think it was back in February, where we organized an engineering-focused event where Martin Gulma, the head of software engineering at Pipedrive, where he talked about this framework from the engineering perspective. But since we have started with this product-related as the first one, hopefully in a series of product-related events to come, I would still like to give you a little bit more of an overview of what Tribes and Missions actually is, because most of you, based on the registration, are newcomers to our Pipedrive events, and you might not actually know what Tribes and Missions are and how we actually structure teams within our Pipedrive engineering and product and design teams. So, I know this is a very busy image, but this is how we actually have our engineering and product teams structured within Pipedrive. So I will go into each of these sections individually, just to give you a quick overview of how it actually works like. So, the entire engineering and product organization is structured to individual tribes. So as you can see on the image, for example, Tribe A, so each tribe is led by an engineering manager who is leading the engineers within this tribe, and also the lead PM who is leading the product organization for this tribe. Each tribe is responsible for a certain area of the product, and each tribe holds an expert knowledge in that product, area. To put it in an example of Pipedrive and for what we are working on here at Prague, currently at Prague we are still working on setting up a fully working tribe. We are currently at around 16 people working for our Prague tribe. But the product area that we are focusing on for Pipedrive customers is prospecting, which is essentially helping our customers, which are salespeople, help find and qualify more leads and essentially contact more customers to whom they can sell their products or services. Now, each tribe, how they structure their work, they structure and plan their work into missions. So, mission team has a product manager, a designer, and several developers. Essentially, a mission team has enough people to be able to deliver a fully working solution from like 0 lines of code. So it can be either like full stack developers, front-end developers, back-end developers. We have also product researchers and data analysts helping us with the initial stages of the product analysis and the ideation phase. And also each mission is led by a mission lead, which is usually a person from the engineering department. Now for the missions, I will actually go a little bit more deeper about how we structure the work in mission teams and how the overall cycle works, because this is actually something that I think would be interesting to all of you here. Just out of curiosity, how many of you here today are product managers? So quite a few, like a third. So yes, this is exactly why I wanted to go into the missions in more details, and that is yet to come. I just wanted to walk you through the whole overall framework and how we have set it up. I actually, just as a fun fact, I have joined Pipedrive just a little over 3 months ago, so I do not actually have the comparison about why this model works so much better than the previous one. I have only been able to experience the benefits from working at Pipedrive for 3 months already. So just like this is kind of the reason why I even didn't compare those two models, because I am not the most educated person to be able to compare these two different models. Now to continue with this image, each tribe, as you can see on this image here as well, also has a launchpad. A launchpad is a group of engineers that are currently not on a mission, and they are supporting those missions either via research for upcoming missions. They can help landing the mission, for example, with delivering and integrating the outcome of the missions that the rest of the tribe is currently working on. And they are also improving the overall product quality, and they are somehow working on the smaller tasks and also bug fixing. And as a last step, they are also taking care of any on-call responsibilities. Now, this is more engineering focused, but to explain the whole picture as a whole, we also have guilds that facilitate the cross-tribe cooperation for specific ideas, for specific areas like front-end architecture, back-end architecture, quality and monitoring. And we also have kind of like supporting teams that are general services in engineering support all of the tribes, which is the infrastructure teams, quality assurance, and agile and personal coaching. Now, as I mentioned, since this is a product-related event, and what is mostly important for you, or what should be interesting to you, is how we actually work in missions, and what are the benefits of actually working with missions in the Tribes and Missions framework overall. So, the missions framework is essentially split into 3 different parts. The first part being preparation, the second part execution, and the third part learning. Now, whenever you want to start working on a mission, you start with identifying the problem. So what do we actually want to achieve and how do we measure it? What are the problems that our customers are currently solving? What is the feedback that is constantly coming in? And what are the pain points that our customers are currently having that we could improve for them? Or what are the additional services that they would be willing to pay for? What are the problems that are so painful for them that they would actually give us money and if we were able to solve it for them? It all starts with identification of the problem. Then you go into the second stage, which is validating the problem. So how many customers are actually impacted by the problem? Is it even worth our time to assemble a full mission team to actually work on solving that problem? Now, the great thing about the mission framework is that there are no limitations or guidelines as for the processes or the tools that you can choose to identify and validate or ideate the possible solutions, which goes to the next stage. So in this stage, what actually fits really well here is the design sprint, as you have heard previously from Kalev. But that doesn't necessarily mean that for each mission you need to run a design sprint. You can choose any tool you want to be able to identify and validate the problem. It can be a design sprint, you can run those interviews on your own without the need of the design sprint. Really just anything that would allow you to determine whether this idea, whether this solution to the specific problem is worth pursuing. Now, there is an important milestone at the end of the preparation phase, which is called a pitch. Tuesdays are very important days at Pipedrive because every Tuesday at Pipedrive there is a company-wide event happening called Pitching Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, each mission that is prepared to be pitched is pitched usually by the product managers, whether it's like a feature or a product-related problem, but we also have some engineering missions that are pitched usually by the mission lead from the engineering organization. And you basically start gathering the mission team. Sometimes you usually pre-select the people from your tribe who could actually start working on that mission. But what is really great about the Tribes and Missions framework is that it allows engineers to work on the missions that they actually want to work on. And that can be engineers even from different tribes. So we've already had a couple of engineers from our office in Estonia and Tallinn that joined our mission in our Prague tribe to help us with the progress. So even there is also a place for such a possibility to allow engineers from other tribes to join missions from another tribe to start working on that if they feel that they would be adding enough value and that if they think that this problem or this solution, this mission is actually something that they would like to work on. Now, once you start with the execution phase, once you have gathered all of the necessary people, you start validating the solutions. So, do some of our solutions work for the customer? This is not necessarily done always in the execution phase. This can be done already in the design sprint, but sometimes it can happen when you start working on the execution or working on the solution that the solution that you've thought of previously would not work for your customers once you've already started working on it. So it may end up that you start working on a completely different solution while still trying to solve the problem that you've identified at the beginning of the entire process. Once you've validated that, you start building the solution. So how can we make it stable? How can we make it reliable? How can we actually set out and build this in the time that we have set it out for? Now, the important thing to also mention here with this mission framework is that at the beginning of each mission, there is a limited timeline. So usually these missions run on average for about 6 weeks. And the thing here to mention is that you don't necessarily need to run night shifts or work on during the weekends just to deliver the scope that you have set out to deliver. But what you have actually not set out to deliver any scope at the beginning of the problem. You have set out to identify the problem and solve the problem for the customer. You have not set out to deliver a certain scope. You have set out to solve a certain problem for the customer. So when you're working on a mission, you have the given, the constant things are the number of team members. The constant thing is the timeline. Of course, like things can happen and you can somehow ask for like extending of the mission, but it shouldn't in reality or in theory happen. But the thing that can actually change is the scope. So how can you creatively work with the scope while still delivering the solution to the problem that our customers are having? So once you have actually worked on the solution and delivered the solution, you land the mission. So how can we make it maintainable and supportable? This is usually where the mission team also works with the Launchpad to make it scalable and to deliver the solution to the entire user base that we are having. And now for the third part, the learning part, we are running continuously tech and process retros. So what have you actually learned working on this mission? What have we done well? What can other mission teams learn from what we have done? But what also didn't work well, and what are some of the pointers that we can give to the rest of the company that they don't repeat the same mistake? Also, as you all know, with just releasing the product, the journey doesn't quite end there, and mostly it just starts there. So deliver the solutions, because like if you deliver a solution and no one will use it or no one will buy it, were you actually successful? I think not. So you also start gathering data and you are analyzing what impact did it have on our customers and whether you can consider this mission as a success. And we also run recurring business retros. So what have you learned from delivering the solution from the business perspective, and decide kind of if we want to, for example, leave the solution that we've delivered at its own state, or do we want to, for example, run some follow-up missions? Are our customers asking for some additional features that without which they wouldn't, for example, didn't use this, or things like that. Now the benefits of that. As I mentioned, the biggest benefit is mostly the better allocation of resources. So as I mentioned, engineers can choose which missions they can work on, but also what you can work here with in comparison with the standard model is an ideal team size. So in the more traditional model, from my experience, you are working with a fixed amount of engineers. So let's say that you have a team of 5 engineers. Not necessarily each solution to a given problem requires those 5 engineers. Some solutions only require the time of 3 engineers. On the other hand, some solutions are more complex ones. They are touching a part of a larger initiative, and you might need more than 5 engineers. This mission framework actually allows you to be flexible as that. So one mission can be only, for example, 2 engineers, but one mission can be even like 8, 9, even 10 engineers to be able to deliver that solution. Now, the other benefit is that engineers focus only on one problem at a time. So, and whenever an engineer is working on a mission, they are not working in the Launchpad, so they are not bothered with the bugs from previous missions, they are not having any on-call responsibilities, so this allows for faster and higher quality solutions, because once they are working on a mission, they are only focusing on that mission and on nothing else. And also, what I already mentioned, this allows for higher flexibility and agility to be able to quickly come up with or quickly identify potential problems our customers might be having, quickly identifying that this problem is actually worth solving, and quickly gathering the mission team and start working on it rather than waiting for a year-long roadmap before you actually start building the actual solution. And the freedom to choose the mission you work on, that's not only for the engineers that they can actually choose and apply to for which missions they want to work on, but also from the product perspective, you as a PM are one of the main makers in the respect that you are in charge of identifying the problem and identifying the possible solutions. So you yourself as a product manager are able to work only on the solutions that you want to work on and that actually makes sense for the business and for the customers. Now for the planning side, to kind of mention it from the product perspective, so you should always set strategic objectives for the company. This is absolutely crucial because even though this drives and missions model gives you enormous flexibility and kind of even responsibility, you can also very quickly start running in different directions and start setting out, like solving different problems for the customers, but that don't necessarily tie back to the overall company-wide vision or help you achieve those high-level company business goals. So you should always set a strategic objectives for the company. The most important thing also is continuous discovery and customer interviews. So you should always, as a product manager, collect feedback from real customers. And even though in Pipedrive we have the luxury of actually having product researchers to help us with that part, and Paula will talk a little more about that topic later in the evening, but even though we have those product researchers, you shouldn't be disconnected from them. You should always set out and do those customer interviews yourself. Because as a product manager, it's quite easy to get siloed or disconnected from the customer and start working on a solution without actually being connected to the customer. So you might actually end up building a solution and then talk to the customer and, hey, it doesn't work. What happened there? So, for example, at least I myself, even though like all of us have busy schedules, I want to do at least like 5 user interviews every month just to be able to talk to the real customer. Usually they end up talking also about some other problems that they are having with the tool, but it's completely fine. You just pass on the feedback to the relevant people within your company and everything is fine. But it gives you the perspective of the user hands-on from like your own eyes, and they even share their screen usually, walk you through the problems that they are having, and this is extremely useful for me as a product manager. And while doing that, while always collecting all of the feedback, you will necessarily, like, this is even inevitable, like you will become an expert in your product area. And once you have done all of the customer research, once you become the expert in your product area, and you also have the strategic objectives already set, it's so easy for you to match the customer problems with the strategic objectives, and it allows you to actually prioritize the problems that you have identified. So you have the customer feedback, you have the problems, and you have the strategic objectives. So which are the problems which you prioritize? The ones that will help you achieve those objectives. And also, you should always look at a bigger picture. This will help you to deliver value with the highest impact. Talking about the highest impact, Amit will talk about that shortly after as well. And basically this is about always keeping in mind that you are not only solving just one problem at a time, but you are working in an environment of larger framework or larger product, and you should not be breaking any user workflows. You should always keep the bigger picture in mind that you are solving the problem for the customer, that are not only working on that one problem, but on a set of given problems. And this will also help you with some road mapping as well. So you should try to constantly reprioritize. So things change and different pressures come up, competition, market shift, new technologies, you name it. But you shouldn't get stuck in timelines that are too long. So how many of you here have actually created a roadmap at least once in your life? And how many of you have had problem delivering that roadmap like 6 months in? Quite a few. So like, you shouldn't get stuck in timelines that are too long, and you should always constantly communicate to your stakeholders that roadmaps can change, and you should reflect that change and constantly reprioritize that. And for example, a great tool to be able to do that is you should create a roadmap around those bigger strategic objectives or the problems that you set out to solve for the customer, and not features. So if you build a roadmap around features, you are immediately committing yourself to delivering that specific feature. And it doesn't even matter whether it makes sense at a time where you actually have time to deliver that feature. So once you've identified a problem, like right now, 12 months, fast forward 12 months into the future, that problem might not be relevant anymore, but it's been on your roadmap and you just set out to build it because it's on your roadmap. This never should happen. And also, you should accept the fact that things can take longer than originally planned, and always communicate to your stakeholders around that. Now, another topic that will be covered by Paolo later today is that we are also working with OKRs within the Tribes and Missions framework, and based on the feedback that we've heard from other product-related events happening in Prague, OKRs are a very popular topic that's being discussed, because there are a lot of different approaches how you can actually work with OKRs, and there are a lot of different approaches on how to do it right. And I will not talk about that right now, and I hope that Paolo later today will. But what I wanted to talk about today is how actually we work with OKRs at Pipedrive in the Tribes and Missions framework. Because, as I mentioned, Tribes and Missions framework, it allows for great flexibility and agility, but you can also run up to different directions, so it's always important to stay on the path to the given goal. So it all starts with the strategic company objectives, and it always should, all missions, all tribes should lead to that. So each tribe will have their annual objectives. We have these annual sessions where we work on these annual objectives for each tribe, and each tribe with its given product area should always have their OKRs tied back to the strategic company objectives. Then those annual ones break down to the quarterly ones, so Tribe 1 Q1 OKRs, Tribe 1 Q2 OKRs, and then the individual missions, those smaller teams that work on the specific problem area, are essentially a piece of the puzzle that will help you fulfill those objectives all the way up to the strategic company objectives. So even when you're working on a mission, you should always know why you are actually working on that mission, and this framework helps with that. What I also try to illustrate, for example, here, is that these missions don't necessarily need to run within the same quarter, but some missions can run over quarters, and they can actually help achieve some of these, like both Q1 and Q2 OKRs. And I believe that's it from me. And if you have any questions?